Hello and welcome to Keep Right On, a Birmingham City podcast brought to you from us here at Birmingham Live. I'm Brian Dick and I'm joined this week not by one Alex but by two. You'll all know Alex Dicken, our Birmingham City correspondent, but we're also joined by long-time Blues fan stroke sufferer Alex Byers as well. Alex, how are you? Welcome to the Keep Right On podcast.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the invite, guys. Great time to be a Blues fan, 7 in a row. So I think it's I've picked an opportune moment to come on. Yeah, so thanks for having me.
Great. Let's start with last night's 1-0 victory over Huddersfield. Your early impressions, your takeaways from that game, please.
Yeah, I mean it was a bit of a grim walk up to the stadium, which was still a full hour before the game started. We got off to our customary slow start, didn't we? I kind of thought after the previous 3 matches, I thought maybe Chris Davies might have us fired up, coming out the blocks quickly. But the keep right on was coming to a crescendo, wasn't it? When down the left hand side, they've overlapped us and nearly put us 1-0 down in the first minute. I thought it probably took us to about half an hour in before we really sort of started to get in our groove and sort of got out of our own half, really. And then the half-time almost felt like it was coming at the wrong time. But then the second half, obviously, we've taken over, haven't we? Which seems to be a familiar pattern we're seeing. And they seemed out on their feet, to be honest, from about the hour mark. So, no, really pleasing win. Kind of waiting for this run to end, but it's not showing any signs at the moment. So, no, absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, this historic win. Alex Dicken, what's your account of last night? And we'll come on to the slow starts in a minute, won't be? What are your big takeaways from the game last night?
A little bit like Alex. I mean, there was that Williamson free kick, wasn't there, about 25 minutes in, that seemed to be the trigger for Blues to take control. And again, they probably could have had 2 before half time, or should have had 2, because May missed an absolute sitter, the miss that he called the worst of his career. And Stansfield, to be fair, his miss wasn't a great deal better. Should have scored that one. So could have quite easily been 2-0 up going into half time. And then second half was as comfortable a 1-0 45 minutes as I've seen in a long time. You know, Huddersfield had absolutely nothing. Blues, you know, to their credit, played the game out in Huddersfield's half. You know, so many times in recent years, you'll have seen Blues go 1-0 up and just sit back and try and hold out and hold on to a 1-goal lead. But this team's a bit different, isn't it? It's better, and they played it out in Huddersfield's half and could have had probably 3 or 4 more goals in the final 15, 20 minutes. So yeah, it's all rosy at the moment.
Alex, you spent the first half very close to Chris Davies. Obviously, he wasn't on the touchline because he's picking up yellow cards like Hallmark. How was he? What was his demeanour like? Was he as agitated in the press box as he was on the touchline?
It's great, isn't it? Because I like to, you get that different insight into the man. You can kind of look at him when something happens on the field, and you can see what his reaction is. And a few times in that opening 25 minutes, I looked at him and there was a right grimace on his face, like he was not happy. There was a free kick given away, I think, by Alfie May, not far from goal, which Anthony Evans forced Ronalds up into a decent save. And I turned around and looked at him and he wasn't happy about that at all. So you get a little bit more insight. He wasn't throwing things and loud in the press box. He was pretty quiet, to be honest. Couldn't really hear much. He was probably about 5 meters over to the left-hand side. But yeah, he disappeared for the second half. I have no idea where he went. He must have gone to a different vantage point. So I didn't get any insight on that. But yeah, it's clear he'd rather be on the touchline. He said he didn't enjoy it at all afterwards. So yeah, back on there against Charlton.
I guess it was a classic situation where most people in football suffer from this, is they will do anything to avoid catching a journalist's eye.
Yeah, definitely. I didn't get any looks in my direction. To be fair, though, most of the play was in that Blues half, and he was looking that way and I was looking that way, so he wouldn't have looked in my direction, but there was no eye contact, I can tell you that.
Okay, so the big thing from last night was Alfie May's contrasting fortune. Obviously, he was back in the side for the first time after spending a couple of games on the bench and seemingly having lost his place to Lyndon Dykes and Jay Stansfield. It was a case of good and bad. Alex B, let's go with the miss to start with.
Yeah.
Impressions of that, could you see from your point whether it was going in anyway? Obviously Williamson told him to leave it. Go on, I'll stop talking.
Yeah. I'm in the cut corner, so I'm down the other end. So it was quite hard to tell from my sort of vantage point whether it was flashing across the face of the goal or whether he's literally taking it out of the net. I mean, firstly, it's unbelievable, isn't it? By 4, I think we're seeing him doing more and more of that. Aren't we? I know you were chucking your underwear at him as far back as July, weren't you? But it took me a little bit longer, I think, to warm to 4. I thought in the first few weeks he was maybe a little bit flimsy in the challenge, but you can just see him growing each game. So it's a great play by him, and I think I feel a bit sorry for Alfie, because I think he's going in there for the tapping, isn't he? He's going in there to put one in on the floor, and then he's kind of just being instinctive. He's a goal scorer, and he's just trying to instinctively use his body to guide it towards the goal or towards the net. He probably, I assume, thinks it's not going in. I think he doesn't realise that Gardner-Hickman's coming behind him, and actually, if he moves out the way, Gardner-Hickman, I think, just chests it in or nods it in for 1-0. So it's obviously a terrible miss. I think he's just been instinctive in that moment, really. I wouldn't put it down as a howler, because I actually think if you actually look at it, it's almost semi behind him and it's coming off the top of his head. But clearly he just needs to get out of the way, doesn't he? So would have been a wonder goal.
He does. I actually think he wasn't having a great game, no. even to that point, and then beyond that point, I thought some of his decision making was really quite ordinary at times in the final third. And Alex and I were sort of grumbling about him over message, weren't we, at half time? But yeah, he obviously redeemed himself. Alex, Dicken, your take on Alfie May's night?
Yeah, I find it quite hard to judge him at the moment, to be honest, because he's obviously playing that new position off Stansfield. I don't think that necessarily suits him. I think he would rather be the main man up top. I think it probably, I don't know, in my eyes, maybe that is the way to use them, because May's more of a natural number 9, whereas we know Stansfield can play a little deeper. But Chris Davies is obviously doing it because he wants someone who can run in behind, and he thinks Stansfield's movements are better and more suited to the way that Blues play, which is fair enough. So it's either for May playing that slightly withdrawn role or be on the bench, simple as that. And I think that's why we might see him on the bench a lot as well. I think he's probably going to be, on the bench as often he's going to be in the starting 11, in my opinion, because the quality Blues have got in those positions. Like you say, Brian, there were instances where he got into good attacking positions and the decision making let him down. I don't particularly like it when he ends up in wide areas. A lot of the first half, he ended up drifting over to the wide left, and he's not a player who's necessarily going to go past someone with a trick or a bit of pace. And he's not necessarily someone who's going to work half a yard to get across him. So I'd rather him be in the centre, in the box where he can do damage, and he's not always in those positions at the moment. I think that's affecting his performances.
Other Alex, is it fair to say we have seen some reasons why Alfie hasn't played at a level higher than League One?
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, I think if you go back to his Doncaster days, I think that sort of wide left area is kind of where he played. Sort of 4 or 5 years ago, and I don't think he necessarily contributed anywhere near as many goals as he has done since he's moved into a central position. So yeah, maybe we are seeing sort of the old Alfie May before the goal glut arrived. I almost feel like due to his lack of minutes at the minute, he's almost trying too hard when he gets the ball. He's like, it's always a killer pass, or he's trying to impress every time he gets on the ball. Similar to Alex, I thought when we signed Stansfield that he would continue to sort of lead the line, and it felt natural that Stansfield maybe buzz around him, using his energy and maybe find those sort of left channel areas. But it seems clear, Stansfield's going to play that role down the middle, and May's going to have to sort of accommodate that. It feels a bit of a waste of his talent, but when the team's winning and scoring goals, and he's still, I suppose, contributing in terms of the goal last night, then it's working for the team currently. But I can imagine he's probably a little bit frustrated.
Is it either of you can take this? Is Alfie May in Blues' best 11?
Go on, Alex.
That's a really tough one.
Okay.
I mean, I like Williamson in the hole, and I suppose you could have Scott Wright to the right hand side, and maybe at the minute that balance might be a little bit better than having Alfie sort of playing off Stansfield. I don't think we'd really have a best 11 is probably the honest answer. I think we've probably got a best 14, and it's how we accommodate those players. But at the minute, I think you can't really argue with him being on the bench. I
think May's fortunate that the wide options aren't great for me. I I think Blues are really strong throughout that spine. Like if you look at 5 or 6 players in the middle of the pitch, they're all like top end championship. But then I think in the wide areas, particularly the wings, Emil Hansen's done okay, good system player on the left, which is probably why he starts more often than not. Keshi Anderson, I don't think he's going to be a player if Blues want to compete at the top end of the championship when they go up. Scott Wright has done really well off the bench last couple of games. Before that, I wasn't quite sure. So I don't think there's anyone really jumping out in terms of the wide position. So that's allowed Davies to put Thor wide on the right to start games and allowed him to fit Alfie May into the team. And I think that'll probably carry on. It'll be rotation between Dykes and May to play behind or off Stansfield or with Stansfield until some wide option really jumps up and says, you know, I'm the player that deserves to take the right position.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, I'm just happy that Alfie and Jay are clearly getting on. You know, obviously, I was a little bit worried about the dynamic between them, but
it's a figment of your imagination. This is Brian.
No, I'm sure it is. Yeah, I just know how I'd feel in a highly unlikely event that somebody paid 15 million on me to play football, and I was the person that was displaced.
You could see the gratitude of the goal, actually, couldn't you?
Yeah,
he made a real point of going over and sort of thanking him, didn't he?
Absolutely,
nice to see that was.
Yeah, indeed. And you spoke to him afterwards, Alex? He made a reference to the sort of the group camaraderie, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he actually. When I asked him about him and Stansfield, he kind of started talking about Stansfield and Dyke, saying that, you know, when they play together, that obviously, you know, they've got a good connection and that works as well. So it feels like he's quite kind of content to just play his role rather than be the main man, which is probably music to Chris Davies' ears because all he speaks about is kind of them all playing for the team rather than themselves. And he was really complimentary about Stansfield, probably a little bit more so than May, because Stansfield got into the goal scoring position and actually set May up rather than score himself. So, I think it's about fitting in with what Chris Davies wants, not necessarily what they want.
I thought Stansfield's performance was good, very good last night. I thought it was quite unusual from the point of view of his chances. Normally, he just leathers the ball, doesn't he? You know, I know Wayne Rooney somebody mentioned that Wayne Rooney felt he kicked the ball too hard when he had a chance. But the chances he missed, certainly the one in the first half, he kind of passed the ball in, or tried to pass the ball in, as opposed to absolutely putting his boot through it. What did you make of Stansfield's overall performance, and then obviously that sort of composure for the decisive goal? Alex B.
I thought his overall performance was really good in terms of, you know, first of all, it's nice to see Blues, you know, not be so sort of militant with the whole possession-based thing. You know, we do occasionally, you know, go into the channel. We're not afraid to go long, so we do have some variety. But I think Jay's done really well in sort of spinning into the channel and battling for the ball and holding it up or forcing defenders into mistakes and misclearances. So I think, yeah, he's been really effective. In terms of his chances, yeah, it was very out of character, wasn't it? I mean, the first one, I think if he actually looks up, I think it's the other corner. There's quite a large gap there to the goalkeeper's left-hand side. I think he can just take a look and put it in that corner. The second one is probably the worst one in the second half, when Samsted's done really well to pick him out. And then, you know, he's taken a touch when maybe he could have gone first time. And then when he has taken the touch, whether he's slightly off balance, I'm not sure. He's almost falling over as he strikes it, and he's dragged it wide. I was really surprised to see him put that one wide. I think there was another one later on as well. He's probably more of a characteristic finish where he's really put his foot through it and it's gone just narrowly over. But yeah, it's one of those days. I mean, it's a sort of day, actually. I thought, just before we scored, I thought, is this the type of game where Blues will lose? You know, where we've actually created a lot of chances, possibly more chances than we have done for quite a while at home. And we've squandered them. And Huddersfield going to go and score a goal late, and we don't have the time to come back. I think that if we are going to lose, that's probably the way it's going to happen. But, you know, in terms of Stansfield's overall performance, I thought he was really good. I thought he led the line really well. And I thought it was a cracking goal in terms of, first of all, coming deep, spinning that pass into Samsted and then getting on his bike. And he's done really well to hold him off as well with the return pass. So I think Stansfield can be happy with the performance. I think he's going to be frustrated with the missed chances, but you know, I don't think it's it's not going to be an issue going forward. I'm sure next time a chance comes around, he'll take it.
Alex, you made reference to Alphonse Samsted's part in that build-up. What did you make of his overall display? Yeah,
Samsted, I thought. Oh, so is that for me? Sorry, yeah. Yeah. So it's confusing me to Alex's, isn't it? Samsted. I thought he played really well. Yeah, I thought his pass selection was was really clever. His first touch, his weight of pass. You know, I thought he had a lot of joy down the right hand side. He got in several times, and I think, you know, if we're comparing our three right backs, the one criticism of Laird early doors was, you know, he's absolutely fantastic at getting into those spaces, and then when he gets there, he's almost just sort of putting it into an area without really picking anyone out. I think when you look at Samstead, he looks up and he picks people out every time, which is really, really, you know, I'm assuming Davies brought him on to bring that sort of quality, and he delivered that. Garner Hickman, I don't think was having a particularly bad game, but he was on a yellow card. Probably wasn't having as much joy with the ball. So yeah, I think Samstead's probably staked his claim now for ahead of the weekend. I think he can, you know, he's got a good case of being in the starting 11.
Alex, we've got some questions and takes that have been submitted, and one of them is about the right back situation. It seems we might as well talk about it now. Alex has mentioned Laird, who is nearing a return to fitness. Gardner Hickman's been really impressive since he's played there, and now Samstead has sort of put his marker down. What do you think Chris Davies, or how do you think Chris Davies will see that sort of that trio, and who would be his first choice right back? And you're not allowed to say he's going to rotate right backs.
No, I don't think he's, you know, this whole idea of rotation. Actually, speaking to Chris last week, he just said the team will naturally rotate itself with injury, suspensions, things like that. So he doesn't. I don't think he's a big believer in natural rotation, where you just kind of like take players out for the sake of taking it out. I think it'll just happen. I think there will be a first choice right back come forward, and I think it will be one of the natural right backs, Laird or Samstead. I think it's just been a kind of a needs must with Gardner Hickman. Samstead was very unlucky actually when he came back from international duty with Iceland before that Wrexham game, because apparently he picked up food poisoning in that week, which meant that he couldn't train. So Gardner Hickman obviously had the edge and played well and kept the place. So I'd be surprised if Samstead didn't get a start at Charlton on the strength of that performance on Tuesday, to be honest. I mean, he's made 8 sub-appearances now, and to be fair, a few of them have been really decent. So that was the longest we've seen of him against Huddersfield, and I was really, really impressed. And Chris Davies spoke really highly of me afterwards. So I reckon he'll start, and then it's down to him to keep Laird out after the international break, isn't it?
I think the one thing with Samstead is we've not seen him tested defensively yet. Just looking at him with sort of the eye test, I look at him and I do worry that he's maybe not got a great physical profile. He doesn't seem particularly robust or quick compared to Gardner Hickman, who I think he's incredibly solid. So I think that's the one big question mark over Samstead, which, you know, hopefully he'll pass that test when he gets the chance. But that's the only one remaining question over Samstead. I think on the ball, I think it's it's quite clear he's very, very talented. But I think I'd like to see him tested defensively, and maybe that'll happen at the weekend.
You could almost argue that with 70% possession, that's not a massive issue.
That's true, yeah.
It does seem to boil down between, I suppose, Laird's incredible athleticism and Samstead's greater technicality. Is that fair, Alex Dicken?
He definitely has shown more composure in the final third. When you think of what Samstead did to pick out Stansfield for the cutback last night, compared to even Laird's involvement in the Alfie May goal at Wickham, where he kind of did just put it into an area and it wasn't like a direct pick out, and he was very fortunate at the end of it that May kind of snuffed it out and actually managed to score the goal. So Laird needs to improve in that aspect, I think, to get back in the team. Because that's probably the only disappointment of his start of the season. I thought he was really, really good in those first six games also. And like you say, he showed a great athleticism down that right side and really fitted the system well, but wasn't able to provide those assists when he got into those positions. If Samstead can do that, then he'll have the shirt, won't he?
Yeah, I think Laird's chest control on Bielik's diagonal at Wickham will go down as one of the touches of the season, albeit very early on at the moment. But then you do make a fair point about the just felt a bit approximate, didn't it? The ball into May that day. I suppose if we're taking Davies at his word, Samstead will have the shirt, we think, on Saturday, and then it's for someone else to get it off him until that natural rotation happens, or maybe Samstead's international commitments, mean his conditioning is compromised a little bit, and then someone like either Laird or Gardner Hickman gets back in. So yeah, yet another option, I suppose, is the way to sort of put a bow on that little discussion. The big thing, I think, was the goalkeeping change, wasn't it? You and I were starting to wobble in the last podcast, Alex, Dicken, and we just felt that Chris Davies would maybe keep not upset the apple cart. The apples were strewn everywhere on Tuesday night, weren't they? Alex B, were you surprised? And what did you make of it all?
I was a little bit surprised. I'll be honest, I was at the sort of make a change stage after the weekend.
Right.
I was of the sort of impression that Chris Davies will keep playing Peacock Farrell whilst we were winning games and whilst those errors weren't costing us points. But I think it gets to a stage where you can't just keep absorbing the errors, and eventually it's going to cost you. So also, I think, on the basis that we'd sort of been sold this idea that it was two number ones, I think if it's a senior keeper and a young understudy, I think you have to let the senior keeper sort of play through that form. But I think on the basis that we had an experienced, another number one who's played in the Championship last season, I think the time had come really to give Allsop a go. Yeah, I mean, he didn't have a lot to do today. I think, he had a save from a free kick early doors. I think first 15 minutes there was still a little bit of a tension, particularly in the Tilton, towards the keeper having the ball. I don't think that had really passed since the weekend, and I think Allsop was maybe taking his time on a few of the balls back to him, and it was getting people a little bit angsty. But I thought he sort of grew into the game, and then I thought the second half he was really comfortable. There was also a time in the first half as well where he come and swept out and cleared one with his head, which I don't think we'd see Peacock Farrell doing that. I think he's a bit more timid and a little bit more sort of stuck to his goal line. Another difference between the two as well is Allsop's two-footed, and I think that makes quite a big difference in terms of, if you look back at the goal against Peterborough, I think Peacock Farrell's having to open out onto his left foot to try and play it out to left back. Whereas I think in a similar situation, I think Allsop's actually got the ability actually just to sweep that out first time with his right foot. He can play off both feet first time, which is quite an advantage when you're trying to sort of play out quickly. There was a few times early doors, actually, I think Allsop was actually trying to, bait the press, as they say, with the striker, in the hope that when he then does play that pass into Bielik, he can then step into the space and we can get out. And I think there was a little bit of, maybe there's a bit of misunderstanding from the fans, I'm not sure. Maybe Davies doesn't want him to do that either. But yeah, I thought, I think Allsop's played 4 games now. I don't think he's really given us a reason to be worried. I think he's been pretty secure.
No, I think my big takeaway was you used the word timid about Peacock Farrell. I feel Allsop plays that position with more personality than Peacock Farrell. Do you agree, Alex Dicken?
Yeah, definitely. I always think there's conviction with his passes. Like when he gets the ball and opens up and he just whips it into players, doesn't he? He doesn't kind of just tap it to the side. Like sometimes Peacock Farrell will just stand there and wait for Bielik or Clara to split either side of him and just kind of roll it to them. Whereas Allsop seems to take the initiative and make a movement himself. I actually was quite impressed with his distribution in that game. Really impressed. Like you say, he had pretty much nothing to do goalkeeping wise, and that's what he'll be judged on. But like Alex said, we've not really been given any reason to not trust him in his first 4 appearances for the club.
Yeah. Alex Dicken, you've put on the running order the midfield. There is a question about the midfield. Were you making a reference to the Paik and Iwata partnership there, or should we leave it or move on, or is there something you want to say now?
Just wanted to wax lyrical about it, to be honest. The second half when Thor just kind of stood in front of them and they're knocking it around and they dictated the play 15-20 minutes, it was just ridiculous. I thought Iwata was a little bit loose in possession at times in the game, but the way he kind of turns it over and wins the ball back, the interceptions and interventions that he makes are just ridiculous. That's probably a midfield that it wouldn't be out of place for Championship. I know it comes on to that question we've had in the questions, and it's probably more one for you two than me, but has there been a better midfield pairing at Blues, or when was the last time Blues had a midfield pairing of this quality?
We will come on to that in a bit, I think, because that could be a podcast in itself. But yeah, I just went on social media this morning to see if there are any Celtic fans bemoaning the loss of Iwata. And now obviously they got thumped 7-1 at Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League last night, and there were a couple, but there wasn't an easy headline for me to lift and say Celtic are lamenting a Birmingham City transfer. So yeah, again, obviously massively impressive. Michael Duff, you put on the running order here, Alex. Michael Duff, I don't think we're going to get judged on Birmingham away, and another Birmingham stan, shall we say that?
Yeah, this actually made me laugh, to be fair. He's really complimentary. I actually thought he was the most magnanimous in defeat of all the managers Blues have faced this season. All of them have spoken about Blues at length, apart from Ruben Sellers, who clearly didn't care on the opening day about Blues and just wanted to talk about his own team, which is fair enough. But the rest of them obviously are getting used to this kind of spiel now of Blues have got more money than us and everything. Whereas obviously, Michael Duff made reference to the quality of players Blues have got without actually talking about money. But that particular comment, just kind of, I don't think we're going to get judged on Birmingham away. It just suggests that the rest of League One kind of has seen Birmingham as a free hit, and that's like a relegation team going to Man City in the Premier League and being like, oh, we're not going to get judged on this game. Huddersfield are supposed to be Blues rivals promotion this season, aren't they? And if they're talking like that, it's crazy, really, the standard Blues setting.
Does it not feel like the rest of League One has awarded Blues the title already, though, Alex?
Literally, yeah, literally. It's crazy. Like the way that managers are talking about Blues, like they're the best League One team ever. And I know we're probably going to do that as a separate podcast as well, whether they actually can be or are. But they're on course to break that 103 points record, and it is like certain managers just handing the trophy already. Alex B, the one horse race. What are we saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's a familiar pattern, isn't it? I feel like it's Wednesday today, so tomorrow I assume Nathan Jones will be on Charlton TV saying, Birmingham City are the best team in the league, best team he's ever seen, and if we get anything, it's a miracle. It does seem like a lot of teams are going into the game sort of, almost laying out these excuses before they lose, and then once they do lose, they almost dismiss the defeat as well. It was going to happen anyway. But I mean, it's a compliment to us, and to be honest, I'm all for it. If that's the sort of mindset they're going into the game against us, it's kind of worth something. So, yeah, we've had Steve Evans, we've had Michael Duff. I'm sure Nathan Jones will be doing the same. So, long may it continue.
I think Nathan Jones has already done it, hasn't he?
He has, yeah.
After
the cup game, it was something like these are expected to win our league by a country mile or something like that at a counter.
Yeah. It's reminiscent to me, albeit with the boot very much on the other foot. I remember Lee Bowyer, talking to Lee Bowyer as he was about to take a Blues team to face Fulham, who were rampant at the time, and I think they'd just put 6 past somebody. And Blues are off to face them at Craven Cottage, and there was a defeatist element to, almost even worse than, oh, it's a free hit, we can play without fear. It's oh yeah, look, curse my luck now, we've got to go and play the best team in the league. Blues are developing a superiority complex, but also the rest of League One appears to be developing an inferiority complex as well. And as Alex says, long may it continue. It's a real novelty that's not wearing thin at any stage at this point. Alex Dicken, you've come up with some stats that probably underline that this Birmingham City team they both have style, but there's a bit of substance there as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I remember when Chris Davies took over, he said that he wants to, have possession, but possession with a purpose, not for just, aesthetics. And obviously got the most goals in League One with 17. In terms of shots per game, remember last season when it was all about we've got to have 20 shots per game and stuff. And Brian, you and I were talking on the podcast quite a lot about that. Well, yeah, you can have 20 shots a game, but if one of them's on target and it's just a daisy cutter into the goalkeeper's hands, then what's the point?
That was a Mowbray. That was a big Mowbrayism, wasn't it?
It was a Mowbray a little bit, but there was more purpose under him. There were better chances. There was a lot under Rooney. Whenever there was like 20 shots, it was like the World Cup had been won. Blues have had 5.3 shots on target per game of those shots as well, and that's second in the league, which suggests that when they get into those areas, they're making good choices and actually having good shots. Like even if you think of Huddersfield, like the best chances Blues had in that game actually weren't shots on target. May header over the bar which should have been a goal, and both of Stansfield's both went wide, so not on target. But most importantly, which probably justifies the way Blues are playing, is that they've had the fewest shots conceded per game of 7.8. So teams aren't getting chances against them because they're having 68.8% possession on average per game. So, yeah, the system's working very well.
And Huddersfield came into this game, I think, right in saying, with the highest XG.
Yeah.
Is that right? And last night, you got the Mikael Miller chance and maybe the free kick. That was pretty much about it. I don't know what their XG was from last night, but I'd be surprised if it was anywhere close to 2. Yeah,
exactly. To be fair, I was told that XG was built up in the early weeks of the season when they won the first 3, and then they obviously walloped Bolton 4-0 away, so that helped. Right. I don't think they'd been as impressive in the weeks leading up to the Blues game, where they'd obviously lost a few.
Alex, impressions about the Blues machine? Functioning as you'd like it?
Very much so, yeah. I think, when Chris Davies was appointed, my one big fear was that we'd become this sort of possession-obsessed team, a bit militant with it, I didn't want us to become like a Russell Martin side where you get the impression they sort of go in at the end and pat themselves on the back about the number of passes they've made and compare passing statistics. But, Blues play with purpose, and there's a good variety as well. We do try and play out from goal kicks, but, quite often we'll sort of let them press us and we'll actually go long and we'll all shift up the pitch. Quite often we'll go and spin into the channel and play more direct or play direct in behind the fullback. I actually thought last night we didn't play the conditions particularly well in the first 25 minutes. I think Blues tried to go long quite often. When I say long, it was a long pass, but the ball was skidding off the pitch, and I think it probably took us half an hour to realise that wasn't going to work, and we had to keep it to feet and keep it on the floor. But yeah, in terms of the style, it's a well-oiled machine, isn't it? There's a clear identity. You know where the players are going to play each week. The positions sort of Cochrane's going to take up in that sort of almost central area. Clara's bombing up the right wing, holding width on the left with Hansen or Anderson. The right wing back. There's a clear identity, clear way of playing. And I think we've probably, I may be in for a shock, but I think we've probably played every style almost there is to play in League One now. We've had the sort of 10 men behind the ball, defend the box. We've had the high press in your face. We've had set pieces, long ball. We've had Peterborough playing on the break and try and play through us. And so far, none of them have actually been able to sort of last it out for 90 minutes and get the better of us. Reading, obviously, I'd probably say did the best at that, but I think they probably did catch us early and catch us cold. I think that day we played a lot of sort of sideways and backward passes, and I think if you compare that team to the one today, I think we're a million times better than that day. So all the omens are good. It doesn't appear to be a style in League One. It's gonna get the better of Blues. I think if Blues lose, it will be Blues doing something daft themselves and missing chances or getting a red card or something like that. So yeah, in terms of the style, I think you have to give Davies immense credit. 7 or 8 games in to be this fluid with the system already, I think is quite remarkable. I know fans will say, it should be happening. You spent the money, but I think the general consensus around the country was that Blues would start slowly, and perhaps we did maybe in the first few weeks, but we still managed to get the results. And I think we're now having the performances and the results, and I think we're getting better each week.
I think the way the game ended last night was what's becoming a typical Blues game script. With the opposition virtually had their legs run out of them, and Paik and Iwata camped, 35 yards from the opposition goal, and Clara and Bielik sort of sitting there, keeping the back door shut. I'm not massively keen on Clara doing back heels by the opposition corner flag, but I felt that left us a bit open at points. But yeah, the machine is absolutely ticking over nicely. Is there a bump in the road? Is it going to be the pitches next? The next question that as November goes on, sort of enters November, and the pitches deteriorate. Is that going to be the next sort of question mark against this team, Alex Dicken?
The typical one is how they handle the winter, isn't it? I think I was chatting to someone who used to cover Wolves last night, and obviously we're all kind of looking at them and that points tally. And Wolves had a really sticky spell over Christmas. I think they won 1 of 7 and lost 3. So yeah, potentially, I suppose the pitch could become a little bit of a level, like you're getting FA Cup ties early season. But I just think Blues have got so many strings to their bow. You know, you look at how direct they can be. They can play dikes and be more direct, like they were against Rotherham. Williamson's got the potential to run beyond. They've got physical threats as well. You know, I feel like they've built the squad to cope with every scenario in League One. So I don't see them running into that many issues. You know, I think, let's be honest, I think they'll lose a game at some stage. But I don't think they'll go on a run where they can't win in 5 or 6 games.
Right, here's me looking for another problem. The slow starts. What's Chris Davies said to you about the slow starts? Because I know you asked him about it last night.
Yeah, do you want me to read out the quote, Brian?
You can do, yeah.
Okay, oppositions are coming with a lot of energy. Compare the energy we finish with compared to them. By that time, we have dominated the game. They are coming with energy to press, long balls, second balls, and it can get scrappy. We can't be arrogant enough to think that we can stroll onto the pitch and get control in the first minute. We are never going to be able to do that. All we have to do is compete in those early exchanges when the game is tighter and the energy from the opposition is high, and then we can exert some authority in the game. We need to capitalise on that. Do you feel like it's kind of part of his script that they just battle in the first 15, 20 minutes when the opposition come out hard, and then obviously take control? By the time the 60th minute comes, maybe they're a goal to the good. If they're not, they've got the subs to come on, and that's when they do really take control of games, isn't it?
To me, without sounding like an absolute sycophant, that just showed, that comment there just shows me that, you know, Chris Davies has thought of that as well.
Thought of everything, mate.
I mean, it's just another tick in the box, isn't it, Alex B?
Yeah, I mean, he seems like he's a step ahead of everyone, doesn't he?
Does at the moment, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, watching us in the first sort of 10, 15 minutes, it does seem a familiar pattern that the opposition seem to manically press us, defend on the halfway line, and sort of put all their cards on the table early doors in trying to get a goal and then maybe sit on it. I wonder whether it's maybe something we do, maybe we go a bit longer in the first 10, 15 minutes and just almost ignore the press and turn them over. I wonder if that's something maybe we'll see. I'm sure Davies will adapt. It would be nice to see us start a bit stronger and get the first goal. Obviously, we got the first goal last night, but it would be nice for us to come out the blocks and get an early goal for a change, and then maybe we can then go and get those hammerings that we're sort of waiting for. But yeah, it does seem like Davies is comfortable with the starts we're making, despite the fact that we have conceded a few. It seems to be part of his grand plan that we eventually will sort of wear down the opposition. So, you know, it's hard to complain too much at the moment, but it would be nice to see us maybe just come out the blocks a little bit quicker and maybe just try something to counter what the opposition are doing, which is seems to be catching us out quite regularly.
Okay, so we're 4/5 away through this period that we all thought was going to be the real acid test. 4 victories. The next one, it comes against Charlton away on Saturday, a venue where Blues have already won in the League Cup. Alex, Dicken, Charlton were your sort of tip to be the main rivals to Blues, weren't they? What are your thoughts going into that game? And obviously, it's a something of a homecoming for Alfie May as well.
Yeah, they were, and then they've obviously gone into a bad run of form. They've lost the last 3, haven't they? And they're 13th in the table now. You know, Nathan, like we were talking about Nathan Jones earlier, he's going to be absolutely desperate to be the man who breaks Birmingham City's unbeaten record, isn't he? So I expect Charlton to be a really, really good test. You know, even though they have lost the last 3, they've got some really decent players. Alfie May obviously is another side story, isn't he? I don't think, well, judging by what Alfie May said, I don't think we got the full story when he left Charlton for Blues in the summer. Something definitely went on there, because, you know, he keeps kind of alluding to it in interviews that I've done with him, and obviously doesn't want to reveal the full story just yet. He'd be absolutely desperate to score and make an impression. I don't think he needs any more motivation going there. So yeah, it's just whether he starts, really, isn't it? The Blues squad's so strong, which is whether Alfie May actually can get in the 11 at the moment. But Blues will go as favourites, but Charlton are a dangerous team.
Yeah, poor Alfie can unburden himself to you, can't he, Alex? You won't tell anyone, will you?
No, of course not.
Yeah. Any observations about the Charlton test, other Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm expecting a typical Nathan Jones team, which is quite aggressive, quite direct, probably 3 at the back. I noticed last night in his post-match comments, he's tried to take the pressure off his players, and he's blaming himself for the defeat last night and saying that he picked the wrong team, which I think I remember a few Blues managers doing in the past. So imagine he'll have them fired up, sort of backs to the wall, trying to avoid that 4th defeat in a row. But I think Blues have, as we sort of alluded to, have seen every style now, and have seen these sort of mind games from managers. And I fully expect us to go there, have probably 65-70% of the ball. It's just a case of us taking our chances and not doing anything daft at the back. So at some point, we probably will come unstuck, but I think we can go there in confidence.
Dion Sanderson could potentially be in or around the squad. Obviously, he made his comeback for the 21s after about a month out with a foot injury. He's probably 4th in the pecking order, isn't he, Alex Dicken?
Yeah, I think he's really struggling given the way Ben Davies played at Rotherham. He just looks like a shoe-in to be the 3rd centre-back, doesn't he, at the moment? So, yeah, I'd be surprised if Dion gets in the squad against Charlton. I think he'll probably play against Shrewsbury in that Bristol Street Motors game.
Agree with that, Alex?
Yeah, I can't see Dion getting near the squad at the minute. There's a lot of opinion, obviously, on Dion. I don't think he's a bad player, but I think at the minute, you've got Bielik in great form, Clara's in sensational form, Davies has come in, shown he can slot in there, and I think we've even got, even Iwata's played centre back as well. So you could even argue he might even not even be 4th choice centre back, but. Yeah, I think he's going to have to wait his turn, and we'll maybe see what happens in January as well. But I can't see him getting in the squad anytime soon.
Which brings us to takes. Chris O'Neill, thanks for getting involved. Chris said, so many things to have a take on. It's mind-blowing. I'll just focus on people making a stand for a starting place. First time we've really seen Samstead, and he was immense. TGH not done anything wrong. In any other season, we'd be screaming for Scott Wright to be starting. What depth? I think we've covered a lot of that, but let's just dwell a little bit on the Scott Wright observation. Now, I'll say I know Scott Wright marked his debut with a goal, but I wasn't massively blown away with his performance off the bench that day. And my kind of jury, for what it's worth, as in nothing, has been out on Scott Wright. But I think in the last 2 games, I thought he was sort of understanding his role a bit better, or we were using his talents a bit better. Alex B, what have you made of Scott Wright?
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought against Wigan, despite scoring the winning goal, I thought he came on and sort of ran up blind alleys quite a lot and sort of ran into people and didn't seem to understand the role he was playing in that sort of inside right position that it's probably not accustomed to. I think we saw him then play more of a traditional winger role against Walsall in the Cup, where he did okay. But yeah, his last few sub appearances, I think he's been really, really good. It's been really positive, really direct, carrying the ball. I'm going to be unkind on him. I'd personally keep him on the bench for now because I think he's playing that role really well. In the sort of last half an hour, I wouldn't change that at the moment. But yeah, after a start where I wasn't quite convinced, I'm starting to get more convinced by him, definitely. Yeah,
I thought I really picked up the baton in that second half against Peterborough, and you and I were both shocked that was the substitution that was made in the 45th minute, weren't we, Alex Dicken? That ability to pick his way through the middle of the park, that could well be where he's best harnessed, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, the inside right position, he really gets it now, doesn't he? Ball carrying is excellent. I thought he was really, really good against Peterborough. I thought he was effective again against Huddersfield. Like Alex said, though, I'd probably keep him on the bench as well. I don't think being a sub is as kind of hated by players that used to, because you've got 5 subs now. And, Chris Davies has made changes at half-time this season. He's made changes before the 60th minute probably, or around the 60th minute in every game. So you're still going to get minimum 30 minutes if you're Scott Wright, aren't you, on the bench? So I'd keep him in that role.
Dave J says, Blues second half especially looked like a wildlife documentary, like a big cat stalking their prey. Just need the Attenborough commentary over the top. His question is Chris Davies contractually obliged to say 0-0 instead of 0-0? I mean, hopefully he won't be saying either of those things very often. But yeah, I suppose the takeaway there is the dominance, isn't it? And it's the classic Blues game script now of, teams are pretty defenceless, aren't they, by the time you get to sort of minute 75. Alex B.
Yeah, and I'm really pleasantly surprised by how aggressively we seem to see out games as well. I think there was a corner in the 92nd minute last night, and in any other season, Blues would have probably kept 2 players in the corner and tried to keep it there and sent everyone back. But I think we had 8 players in the opposition box. We essentially approached that corner as if it was 0-0. And even in the 92nd minute, as we've alluded to, we had Clara winning the ball and then sort of galloping up the right wing. And yeah, we're certainly not a team that sort of rests on a 1-0 lead. We're fully going out for that second goal every time. Didn't come last night, but there's going to be times where we properly punish teams, I think.
And even on Saturday, when Peterborough probably did have a reasonable 5-10 minutes towards the end of that game at 3-2 down, didn't they? Even that, Blues gave away some free kicks, but Blues weren't unduly pressured, or certainly they didn't lose their shape, did they, Alex Dicken?
No, and the point about the corner is great. Like, how many times in years gone by have you seen, Lyndon Dykes would have been sent to the corner flag, wouldn't he, and been like holding players off and trying to win a throw-in or another corner or something. And Blues just aren't that anymore. They play completely differently. They're trying to see out games in the right way, and they're happy to go toe-to-toe with teams. So, like you say, Brian, even when Peterborough were coming on to them at the end, they were happy to carry on playing their game and try and play through with them, and probably could have had another one late on. So yeah, it's weird to be sitting here after last season, speaking so positively about this team and the way it plays.
Brings us on to questions. We've touched on this, Maria, but I'll ask it anyway, and we can, maybe just give a fairly brief answer. Maria Collins says, I felt much more comfortable with the way Allsop played in goal, although there are a few more long kicks compared to Peacock Farrell. Do you think Ryan has done enough now to be a regular starter? Alex Dicken?
I think so, yeah. He's going to have the shirt, isn't he, until he makes a mistake or whatever, which is the same for what Peacock Farrell had at the start of the season. Whether he'll get 3 mistakes, which is what Peacock Farrell got, I don't know. But the good thing for Allsop is he's not an international, so he's going to play in that Bristol Street Motors game as well, isn't he? While Peacock Farrell goes away with Northern Ireland. So he's just going to be able to kind of get a regular rhythm now of playing matches as a goalkeeper, which is the most important thing. So he should theoretically get better with each performance, shouldn't he?
Indeed. Anything to add, Alex?
Yeah, I think when I watch the two of them, I think Allsop passes the ball like a midfielder and Peacock Farrell passes the ball like a goalkeeper. I think for me, there's a bit of a contrast in the way they strike the ball and the way the way they sort of pass the ball to the defenders. And Allsop so far, he hasn't had to make any outstanding saves, but everything he has had to do, he's done cleanly. I think Hull last season he was a little bit flappy on crosses. I think he dealt with them okay last night. That's another thing we might see in the next few weeks. Maybe comes under a bit more pressure on that. But yeah, at the moment, I think Allsop's got the shirt, and 4 games to date, I don't think he's given us any concerns.
Indeed. Paul Barber said, where do Iwata and Peck sit in Blues all-time midfield partnerships? Alex B, go for this. I've written down a couple of names. Yeah, you've got history to choose from. There you go. Yeah,
I mean, you have to obviously appreciate the level we're playing at as well. That's the first thing. So it's quite hard to compare. In terms of 2 midfielders with sort of passing ability, I think we're struggling to think of any that are sort of on the par. I mean, personally, I'll sort of go back to 2011, and you're thinking of Barry Ferguson and perhaps Lee Bowyer. Different types in terms of perhaps Bowyer was, the terms of the style of play obviously was very different, wasn't it? Back then, in terms of far more possession based now. Can I sit on the fence? I mean, that's quite a tricky one. I wouldn't be. I'm not ready to say that they're the best midfield pairing we've had in my lifetime, which is I've been watching Blues 30+ years, so I still think they're not quite on the top of the list yet. But I think if they continue to do this, for the rest of this season and into next season and maybe beyond, then I think there's a serious conversation.
Yeah, I'm not anointing them yet, but purely because of the level situation. It is League One. And we've got, you mentioned the Ferguson and Bowyer partnership there. They won a trophy, for heaven's sake. They were operating, albeit unfortunately they got relegated in the year they won the trophy in the Premier League. A couple of other sort of partnerships leap out, and again they were from the Premiership era. Savage and Damien Johnson played a lot of games together. Savage and David Dunn probably didn't play enough games together because of Dunn's injury issues, but on paper as a Wales international and somebody probably just about on the fringes of the England squad playing Premier League football, you'd have to say, you know, Savage and Dunn or Savage and Johnson, who was a full-time Northern Ireland international. You know, they were proving themselves or playing certainly at a higher level. And then you can go back into the, you know, the fabled teams of the 1970s, or I can anyway. You two might struggle, you know, with the Hatton Latchford era, and, you know, Malcolm Page, and I know he wasn't a scrapping central midfielder, but someone like Gordon Taylor or Howard Kendall. You know, we can't really beat anointing Paik and Iwata, you know, 7 or 8 games into a League One season for me. But interesting question, Paul. Thanks for that. Joe Watson, do you think it's a worry that some of these players get poached in January, or even worse, Davies? Alex Dicken.
We spoke about the players thing on the last podcast, didn't we? I think, or one of the recent podcasts. I'd be absolutely stunned if any of the 17 players Chris Davies signed in the summer are leaving in January. It wouldn't surprise me if there were teams that are interested in them, but I can't see anyone going. Chris Davies is a really interesting one because given how well he's done and how highly rated he is going to be among Premier League clubs, you know, there could be a club that, you know, thinks we're going to get ahead of the curve. This guy's going to be the next Kieran McKenna, and we're going to go in for him early before, you know, he actually does what Kieran McKenna did, and then we can't get him. So you know what, if Chris Davies goes along this path and keeps doing what he's doing, then it wouldn't surprise me if there are very good clubs looking at him when their jobs become available. But having said that, he joined Blues on a 4-year contract, and you know, every time you speak to him, it's clear that he believes in the project they've set. So why would he jump ship this early? And you know, he did put a lot of thought into his first managerial job, didn't he? Because there were other offers. Swansea City, I think, went in from a couple of times, and you know, he rejected them in favour of going down to League One with Blues. So he clearly isn't, you know, driven by, you know, being in a higher division straight away. He's clearly got a long-term plan. So, you know, what's to say he wouldn't turn down a job offer it came while he was at Blues in League One?
Alex B, I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Chris Davies is shooting fish in a barrel at the moment, isn't he?
He is at the moment, yeah. I mean, in terms of, I was going to say something very similar to Alex in terms of the chances of him leaving. I think, you know, he took a lot of care in sort of choosing his first club, and I'm sure he does have a long-term plan for his career. You know, all the evidence so far in terms of his management suggests he probably has got a very clear idea of what he's going to do in his career and how long he's going to be at Blues. But, you know, I think he would have been sold the project. I think he's got a good chance perhaps of, you know, getting 2 promotions on his CV over the next 3 or 4 years, perhaps. So I've not got any concerns about Davies leaving. In terms of players leaving, again, I think the days Blues sort of being cherry-picked for the best players are probably over. I know, obviously, we lost Jordan James in the summer, but I think he was maybe a special case with us being in League One. I don't see any of the new players being picked off. I think, you know, I've read obviously about perhaps being bids coming for Peck in the summer and we turned them down. I'm sure they'll be interested again in January, but I don't see us breaking up this team anytime soon.
No, not if Blues are 15 points clear, let's say that, in January. Then, yeah, absolutely. Damien Wright has asked the right back dilemma. Who do you see nailing down the #1 spot? I think we've probably answered that, but he does also mention the left wing dilemma. Who do you see nailing down that spot? So the contenders, left wing, Alex Dicken.
Not me, Brian. I'm not a contender. Well, that was back in the day. Yeah, Emil Hansen or Keshi Anderson, it seems, doesn't it?
You have scored 4 at the Hawthorns, haven't you, Alex?
I have scored 4 at the Hawthorns, actually. Every appearance at the Hawthorns I have scored. So,
don't like to mention it, yeah.
Yeah, Emil Hansen, for me, I think, has the edge over Anderson. I mean, I'm still stunned that he was subbed at half-time against Peter because he was the best Blues player in that first half. But Chris Davies saw something different, and you know, Blues ended up on the comeback. So who are we to criticise? I think Hansen offers more than Anderson for me. I think he's got a higher ceiling as well. So I would go with Hansen. I do think Anderson has his uses. I think he's a really intelligent footballer. He can play off the right. I actually think his better performances this season for Blues have come when he's played off the right in that inside right position. I thought he was really good early on, especially when he came on against Reading, then got a little run in the starting 11. Hansen for me.
But, yeah, I think Anderson was good on the right when Ethan Laird was in the side, wasn't he? And Anderson could tuck in, and Laird could be the width. I'm going to move on quickly because I'm conscious of time now. Philip, do you think Chris Davies will change his touchline behaviour after receiving a one-match ban? Alex B, thoughts about Davies and his touchline demeanour?
To answer the question, no, I'm not sure he's capable of being any other way, to be honest. I think he's clearly an incredibly highly driven guy. Very, very he kicks every ball. He likes to coach on the side. No, I don't see him changing. I'd imagine it won't be the first suspension he gets this season. But, for as long as we're winning, I don't think it's a concern. I
think the next one's a 2-match ban, isn't it? If he rattles through the threshold. Is that right, Alex? I
don't know. I haven't checked that, to be honest, but that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
Something we probably do need to check.
I mean, if he's on course for like 4 or 5 bans over the season, by the time he gets his 4th, he might be on like a 6-game ban.
Yeah, Blues will be promoted by then. Jim Crabtree, bearing in mind the strength and depth of the squad, should Blues play on through the international breaks to avoid a build-up of games? Alex Dicken, you've spoken to Davies a little bit about this, haven't you? Because obviously we expect the Cambridge game to be postponed. Obviously, the Exeter one has already. So Blues could potentially be 2 games back, by the end of the second international break on their rivals.
Yeah. So they've obviously had the first international break, and I think we all look at it, don't we, and see how strong the squad is, and think maybe Blues could just carry on. What's the point in building up games? But I think that the way that Chris Davies and people inside the club are looking at it is that why would we weaken ourselves for any single game? If we go to Exeter in the last international break on a Saturday without Willem Williamson, who has been absolutely key in the last 4 or 5 games, without Peacock Farrell, who was #1 goalkeeper at the time, without Samstead, without potentially for this international break, it'd be Peck as well, wouldn't it? So, yeah, and they lose, then it's going to backfire, isn't it? So they're not going to do it, and they'll have the Cambridge game postponed, and they'll have every game where they've got 3 or more international players. They'll have every game postponed. So, yeah. And I can understand why, because they'll be criticised if they lose a game and having played it with a weakened team.
Yeah, go on, Alex. You're about to come in there.
Yeah, I think it speaks for the fans' confidence that we're even asking this question, but Blues aren't going to voluntarily go into a game missing Peck, Williamson, potentially Stansfield to the under-20. It's just not going to happen, I don't think. In terms of the international breaks, Blues have had international breaks for the last 20 years. It's not new to us. And this is probably as much depth as we've ever had. So I think Davies will be perfectly comfortable playing those games later on in the year and trusting his squad. So, yeah, I can't see it personally.
Brilliant. I think anything else, guys? Alex Dicken, anything else you wanted to bring to the table?
No, I don't think there is. I think that's everything, isn't it?
No, fabulous. Alex B?
No, roll on, win number 8.
Indeed.
On Saturday, yeah.
All that remains for me is to go and retrieve my underwear from Thor, and thank both Alexes for joining us today on win number 7. Post the morning after win number 7, it's a keep right on from all of us.